So, as already said, I'm a second-year PhD student, and I brought you a little talk today that is focusing more on what happened for me in this time. So right now I'm working mostly as an experimentalist, and this is what my lab looks like. We have this big deposition chamber, and we mainly do reactive sputtering. On the other hand, I write some code so that NOMAD actually works for us. But when I started 2 years ago, this is what my work looked like. Our lab was a storage space. We were missing 2 walls. There was no tool, no electricity, no gas pipes. And NOMAD looked about like this, at least from our side. We had no idea. But as I studied chemistry, I had no idea of any of this. But our department said, well, we have people who know how to fix walls and electricity, so you're not allowed to do this. So the logical thing to do was to look into data. And I'm very, very grateful that I had Hampus at my side who would explain a lot of this stuff to me and had a lot of patience. But the good thing, as all of this was in the starting stage, is we didn't have a lot of data. So we kind of could grow with NOMAD. By now we have a couple of solutions, and I'm really happy to present them to you today. One of the very nice stories that I want to present to you today is what happens when a target, or maybe in your case, a chemical, enters our lab. We usually get these targets with a little paper sheet that looks something like this. I took a picture of you, looks like that. That tells us what are the impurities in our material. Now, if I want to keep track of all of this, it is really tedious to type this manually. So what did we do? We wrote a little program. Or I wrote a little program here that takes this image, and I can do this here in real time, runs a little image recognition on it, and spits out a little text file for me. Now this doesn't work perfectly. You see there are some mistakes. For example, here it didn't recognize there was an actual Y, but I can change that manually, right? It missed one number here, and it messed up a little bit here. And it also missed the carbon here. And now I know the mistakes that it does. And of course, this is also prepared for you. Then I can just save these changes and run a little second script on my computer, which will ask me a few questions as soon as it is connected. So it will ask me something about which material am I looking at? Which supplier is it from? Because everyone, of course, formats these things differently. So this program's task is to sort through all the data and give me one unified output so that it always looks the same. And later on, I can just drop that text file into NOMAD because I don't want to type it myself. Which unit do we want? So now it's sorted. Now it's ready. So now I can go into my NOMAD that I, of course, also brought you here. Where's my cursor? As soon as I find where I am. I can bring you my NOMAD, our little oasis, and say, I want to create a target. Here I go. I take the same text file that we just generated. As soon as I scroll down a little bit to the impurity file, I just drag and drop it here. Hit save, and this target entered our lab. We now have all the information, the elemental composition. It is there. We don't have to do anything more. But we can actually do a little bit more. Because as soon as we went through this process that I just showed you, we can take this NOMAD entry, use the link to it, and we print a little QR code. I do that usually on my phone, and stick it to my target. And then put it in the collection with all the other targets, so that whenever we search for one, we want to see the target history, we want to know what happened to it, we have it all linked. The next step that I do is I go to our tool, and I actually introduce this target to our tool. So right here, our deposition tool, which target is used. So that later on, when we use the log file, that I will also show you in a few minutes, we can directly automatically connect this target. So I don't have to take care of that anymore. It just knows. The next really nice feature that we imported is we use always the same substrates for our samples. In sputtering, we usually use silicon substrates. So about every 3 months, I spend a day at the laser cutter, and I cut 160 substrates. Now I don't want to introduce 160 substrates one at a time to NOMAD. So we produced a little substrate batch, where you can simply fill in the number of substrates that you want, hit the create button, and then you have 160 substrates, or 5 as in this example. Now finally, we can go to an experiment. We have our material, we have our substrates, we can start a deposition. This is round about what it looks like. Plasma deposition, for those who have never seen it. And we get a little log file out of our tool, which is very nice, but it looks like this. It's one of the Excel sheets. And we actually keep track of 108 properties, and we record the value every 1 second for about 4 to 6 hours. So if you're a human, this doesn't make any fun. This is not fun to look at. You don't get anything out of it. So first, we started to do some analysis of these things to get something out, and made a little graph, or my colleague made a little graph, so that we can see what happened. When did we start different sources? When did we flow different gases? Because there's a lot of different things going on. And so that we have something more human readable.
So we need an extraction of process parameters like the sputtering pressure, temperature, and so on, and not just this huge mess of data. How do we do this? Well, we automated it, of course. So we take this Excel file and we drag and drop it into NOMAD, where it is processed, and then we get all the deposition parameters sorted here in a little overview. Of course, here it's the average, but we also follow the NOMAD structure and fill in all the different steps, so it's comparable to other experiments. This is all set up as a PVD experiment, basically. This has also the very nice effect that it auto-generates this overview plot here, so we can see something, as well as the workflow graphs that most of the NOMAD users should know. So here we can, for example, see that the substrates go in, then we have a couple of deposition steps that do something that is not relevant here, and we get samples out. These plots are also interactive, which helps us a lot with figuring out what happened if we want to look something up. Exactly, and this is where we can go back to the substrate batch that we prepared before. So the targets, like this one here that we created before, this is automatically added. It finds it, the name in the log file, and links it by name. But we have to do a little trick here for the substrates, where you basically go into the subsection that is called substrates. You select the substrate batch that you want to have, and it will automatically find the next unused one and link it to our process. The last thing that I wanted to show here is that we can not only do this for our process, but of course also for the characterization, because our work generates a lot of characterization data as well. And so we spent some time on, for example, creating a possibility to upload and visualize our EDX data. And we tried to set it up in a way that it is basically just drag and drop for the user. So you drag and drop your CSV file into the appropriate field, and everything is handled automatically, from giving you the average layer thickness to creating our combinatorial plots. So you can see, okay, this is a white thickness inhomogeneous sample. It is thicker up here and thinner up down here, and it has quite a nice gradient in that direction. And we enforce that this is done for all the data in our group. So we have everything connected from incoming chemicals down to our characterization data. And that really helps us in figuring out what happens, what is this data, and hopefully in the future it will also help us to share this data with other people and get different labs to communicate to each other.
And my main point that I want to show you with all of this is that even though we're not programmers and we're a very small group without any data stewards and so on, with a little time and patience and help from all the amazing NOMAD people, you can actually start to implement your own research into NOMAD. You can start to build up a structure that helps you, that supports you, and that in real time, I mean, this doesn't take a lot of time for us. If we had to sit down a whole day, no one would do it. And I hope I could kind of show you how NOMAD supports our day-to-day work, how it works in our lab. And I'm glad to answer any questions if there are some.